So you do the Twitter files with Elon, thinking that this is part of some broader free speech, anti-censorship effort. And then he turns around and he throttles Substack links, not just so that you can't get your work out there, but it became impossible or not worthwhile for us to write our little blogs that we did because there was no way to share them around. If you don't have a small email list and you can't put them up on X, that just kills you. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what was that like when you found out that this guy was gonna basically shut that door in your face after everything you did with him and for him?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That was a tough week because that was like the day after the Medi thing happened too.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember saying exactly the same thing. I remember saying that when we covered it. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
Well, 1-2 punch. Yeah.
I mean, look, the money thing is very frustrating because I don't think it's an accident that Barry and I and Schellenberger were the key people involved in the Twitter files, because without the ability to take a long break or enough of a financial cushion from an existing subscriber base to do a long research project, it would have been impossible, right? Your average Substack person who depends on that money for a living has to crank out content at a huge rate in order to actually put food on the table. And the Twitter files, people forget the content was going out on that everybody was looking at was on Twitter.
Right.
They weren't buying it on Substack, so it was great visibility for us. But the money, was really oddly enough, I got more of a financial bounce out of the hearings in March than from the Twitter files. But yeah, this whole thing with Elon has been very frustrating because not just me, but a lot of his loudest supporters were on Substack. And, I think he was trying to buy the platform. I think he was trying to buy Substack and they wouldn't allow it. And
wow.
The guy doesn't understand. He has his understanding of like what things look like to an actual journalist is strange. Like we had an argument about it, and he's like, well, why wouldn't you just move to Twitter subs? And I said, well, first of all, because we get a lot of shit for it, but second of all, why would I ever put my financial existence in the hands of somebody who's already censored me, right? That's like a massive business mistake. I can't, it would be suicide, but it's suicide anyway if you can't market on Twitter. So, but that's my problem.
Well, it's not just your problem. It's a huge problem because it's everyone's problem because it's so antithetical to like his mission statement, quote unquote, when he bought what's now X, right? I mean, like the whole point was for people to be able to share what they say, and then he made this like very proprietary move. Whereas, well, because I don't know. Now you just told I had no idea that was in the offing, that he was trying to buy it. But it makes sense because he was pissed off about their Substack notes copying his format, or he said something about API. I don't know. That's all Greek to me. Yeah, but it was just a real kick in the head.
I mean, the outrage about Substack trying to steal his business by doing notes. This was after he had tried to get me to move to Twitter subs, so he's trying to take Substack's business,
right?
And and he's outraged that they're building their own community there. None of it made any sense. But most of all, it was frustrating just because it put a lid on. I mean, I would love to be able to speak out more about the shit that's happening with Elon, right? The things that are going on in Europe, the Media Matters things. But I'm forced to, every time I write about that or talk about that, to point out this guy is not exactly, a supporter of free speech. I mean, it's right. Very mercenary with him. So it's an enormously frustrating thing. But my experience with media, though, is that it tends to find a way, right? Like there tends to always be some kind of way that people get around whatever the obstacles are. However, we're getting to the point where that's like going to end up being standing on a street corner. That's what I'm a little bit worried that that's where we're headed,
Well, because that's the only real with the advent of the internet came the potential for like a truly democratized and globalized public square. And that's why they have to crack down on it, because the elites don't want a democratized public square. They want the public square to be exactly what you just said, standing on a street corner where only 50 or 60 people walk by you at a time, and so that's your maximum reach at any given moment. As opposed to what we're doing now, we have 2,500 people watching us right now as we speak, and we're a relatively small channel. You had 2 million followers. I mean, your Twitter account was on fire. I mean, you were one of the most viral accounts there was. You'd tweet something out within seconds. It would have thousands of likes and retweets and shares. That's an amazing platform. But ultimately, the elites don't want it. The Democratic Party doesn't want it. And Elon doesn't really want it either, apparently. I mean, it's a brand for him, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot. I don't know the full story, right? It was a little bit suspicious to me that the Twitter files, I mean, whatever his personal differences were with me, it was pretty conspicuous that they stopped. I mean, he could have continued with other journalists. He could have continued doing it with Schellenberger. He could have continued doing it with Paul Thacker, or other journalists. And so this sudden, I'm so mad about this that we're going to shut this whole thing down. It had the odor to me of some other kind of motivation in the background. I don't think it was an accident that Linda Yaccarino came on board afterwards, and in an effort to try to maybe reverse some of the advertiser boycotts that were going on. I'm sure he was taking all kinds of heat, for stuff that was coming out in the Twitter files. I know he wasn't thrilled about some of the directions that some of those reports went in. He had a lot of enthusiasm for certain topics that we never really got into. And there were others that, he didn't really ever ask us to get into that we got into. And he may have gotten some phone calls. And in fact, I can almost guarantee that he got some pretty serious phone calls after some of the stuff that we did. And, I mean, I understand that. That's why we all had this meeting early on in the Twitter files. And one of the first things we all came to the conclusion was that this is temporary. Whatever this is, it's not going to go on for a long time. I don't know what the end game this is, but it's not going to last forever. So let's just get as much shit as we can, and keep this rolling as long as we can, as through whatever means we can. Which I think was, looking back, it would have been nice to extend it a little bit longer, because I think there was some other stuff we could have found out, but there's more stuff. I mean, there are more leaks. The problem is how many people are going to see those leaks. That's the issue.
Right.
See that with Julian Assange, right? I mean, that was the beginning of the strategy of how to deal with all this. And he was the first person that they whipped out the cutting off banking services with, and it's a little terrifying to see that where the end game was with him. But leaks are not to be countenanced apparently in this new system.
Well, and a lot of this, when Elon first took over Twitter, and we took some shit from some of our audience for this, but then there are, you have all your Elon stands too. But what, you trust Elon Musk? And we always said, no, we wouldn't piss on Elon if he was on fire. But you've got a system that's so corrupt that you're forced to choose between billionaires. You're forced to choose, do you prefer Dorsey or do you prefer Elon? And really, it's we have an oligarchy. It's like the Venetian Republic, where you have democracy among an aristocracy, and the great debates are happening between them. So you have this Musk Thiel faction that's nominally pro free speech. They're better than the other billionaires, right? And they're having this fight, and the peasants here are forced to choose between which aristocrats they want to champion, or which they want to support, or which they want to align with. And that's what I see with Elon. I do not understand working people who run around worshiping a billionaire. I don't care what billionaire it is. I don't get it.
No, I look, people made a great hay of the fact, oh, you're carrying water for a billionaire.
Right.
Information comes from who else is going to have that information.
Right.
And
like that's your job as a journalist, to make that kind of a value judgment about where your information comes from.
Yeah, and I went through this a lot with the financial services industry. Especially in the beginning, I had a lot of sources who were very wealthy, like hedge fund types, who their basic complaint was these big banks, Goldman and Chase and Bank of America. They've essentially fused with the government, and what they're doing isn't capitalism, and that way they're not fighting fair with people like us. And therefore, I'm going to tell you like 9 things about them that really suck. And okay, maybe this guy might not be my friend in the normal parlance, right? He might even be a private equity person whose entire reason for living is to eliminate jobs. But in that moment, you're getting information about an even more powerful actor. I mean, those are the calculations you make. That's the kind of thing that happens. In the moment, Elon has a streak of independence. He doesn't like to be told or dictated to. And what's interesting about that is that this whole informational thing, it's a cartel, and it doesn't work if everybody isn't involved. Right. And so that's why he's under such an intense attack. And again, I would love to be highlighting that aspect of it, but he makes it tough. He sure, he does.
Well, so while we're on that, let me get your take on this, because the last couple of weeks, this was quite an exercise in Elon's Queen of Hearts management style, as I would call it. So he seems to co-sign a tweet that many people would read as anti-Semitic. He immediately after that goes ahead and bans the phrase "from the river to the sea" from X as eliminationist. Media Matters drops this story that he's now suing for, probably with some justification.
Some, I think, yeah.
Yes, where they claim that ads were appearing with neo-Nazi content, something that Schellenberger tried to reproduce in the lab and was not able to get the same results. So he's suing for that. He goes and gives a tongue bath to Netanyahu, seemingly in order to get back the advertisers that have left under pressure from Media Matters. And then he immediately comes back and tells all the advertisers to go fuck themselves.
Which, that moment was great. I love that.
So what do you make of this? Because why would you go give Netanyahu a tongue back? Like, why would you degrade yourself that way?
Right.
And then come back and pull that move.
And then give it all away. That? Right. Give it all back. Yeah.
If you read the Isaacson biography, he suggests in a couple of places that Elon has multiple personality disorder. And it's funny, not until I read that did I think, yeah, you know what? Maybe, right? Because like I didn't see him a whole lot, but I definitely had exchanges with him where it's like his whole affect just changed completely. Like in the last 30 minutes, we just had a discussion where he didn't remember the contents of a conversation we had 90 minutes ago. He's an impossible read. He would be very difficult to play poker with. In our initial meeting about the Twitter files, I was really nervous because you're always trying to read what's the motive, like why does a person want to do this. Now I got a very strong sense that he was doing this because he was fucking pissed about something and wanted to just shove this up somebody's ass, and I got the feeling that it was the right people. So then I felt that was satisfying enough to your spider sense that we'll do that story. But I never really got a full read about what was going on in his head because it seemed to change so constantly. You see that mercurial is an understatement with that guy. Like, he's just all over the map, and he'll say one thing, and then 10 seconds later it will be the exact opposite. So I have no idea like what he was thinking. If he would just be frozen in that go fuck yourself moment, he'd be like a hero to mankind.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's the kowtowing and the cruelty and the and the shamelessness that's mixed in between, like, I just don't understand the rest of that picture.
Well, that's always
so
how
basically. So Elon is the Green Goblin, you're saying?
Yeah, he's a little bit, right? Yeah, like the Willem Dafoe thing. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what's going on, is that he's drinking the green enhancement fluid at night. I'm sure he's got some very interesting, sort of pharmaceutical, suppliers, but that can't be the entire explanation. He's a unique character. A lot of these people who are billionaires, they get to be, because they have they don't have to be grounded in reality like other people.
Right. Yeah, they have people who will say yes along the way, who will very much sort of like accommodate these whims. Like, I never dealt with billionaires to my knowledge, but Russell and I are both New York City tour guides. Russell still is. The richest clients were always the craziest ones, always the most impulsive ones. They never paid attention. There was this one couple, not to get sidetracked, but they hired me out to drive them around in private. And they were very, very nice to me. They paid me very well. They had their own driver, and I just sat in the passenger seat, and I directed the driver. And they said, they were from Sacramento. They say, "We want the best New York pizza slice. Where do we get the best New York pizza slice?" I said, "Well, the best slice in Manhattan, I think, for my money, is the Bleecker Street Pizza Nona slice." I don't know if you see, Matt's
Matt knows.
Well, I like John's too, but
that's a sit-down pie place. Like the New York, the Nona at Bleecker Street is like a great grab-and-go Tuscan-style slice. So I said, that's where I kind of want to take you, because it's right in the middle of the village. We can do some cool sightseeing around there. Literally 2 minutes later, the guy's wife, we're going up 6th Avenue, and there's that Grimaldi's sort of kiosk restaurant in that church. You know what I'm talking about, right? And
that used to be the Limelight.
Yeah, exactly. And the guy's wife says, "Oh, Grimaldi's, I heard that's the best pizza in New York. Why don't we go there?" And I tell her, and I had never eaten a Grimaldi slice. I mean, it's fine. I guess I had it that day. I said, "Well, I tried to be polite. So, well, as I just said a few minutes ago, I want to take you to this other place that I think you'll like a little better, right?" She says, "Okay, great. Jorge, whatever the driver's name, pull over. We're going here." As if I wasn't fucking talking to her. We go into the restaurant, we sit down, and the husband says, "Keaton here, our tour guide, said this is the best pizza in New York." I've never fucking been here before. I've not said any of this. Zero. But they were very wealthy. They obviously had no one in their lives who had any reason to like actually push back on anything they say. So they just make up reality as they go along. That's a personality type. Now, Elon may have some unique things going on, but that's a type. I recognize that type. And it's a tech bro type too. Move fast, break things. That was the ethos at Facebook, right? Just all impulse, all ego. Don't think anything through. Make it up as you go along. Take a lot of chances. We'll work it out as we go. And some people are very successful at that.
Yeah, it's grandiosity, narcissistic personality disorder, we're like, that's all familiar. Like most of us have, dealt with the great Santini type somewhere along our lives. That you don't have to have $1 billion to be that.
Right.
But what they add to it is like, they can be very creative in their particular kind of lunacy. I mean,
right.
In addition to being, having a personality disorder that freezes out other opinions, has no tolerance for giving other people credit for things or, whatever. They might actually think that, if they spend enough money, they'll on some project that they can develop something that will keep them alive forever, or that they'll be able to go, faster than light speed and remain in perpetual motion and never die. Like they have thoughts like this, right? That are not like ours. That was something that I didn't know until I started hanging around these tech folks. Some of the fantasies they have are pretty weird, but yeah, just their way of dealing with people. It's not just your traditional Wall Street dickhead thing. It's coded in this kind of like California nice
thing. 100%. Yep.
Right, but it's phony. I actually prefer the Gordon Gekko type who just tells you "fuck you" to your face and is straight with you. It's just much easier to read who that person is. Now they get, when money is on the line, that's when they get clever. But the people in this tech world, that's part of what's been so interesting about this project, is that once you get past the personalities and ignore, if you can get into the documents and ignore what they're saying, that you can actually see what they're doing, and what they're doing is just fucking horrifying. But you're right, it's a personality type. It's just in their case, it's a little more eccentric.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I'm dealing with people like that, I understand Raymond Chandler's novels better.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, exactly.
It's always about, you got invited to the house of these rich weirdos,
right?
And you're gonna delve into their dirty laundry and find out what they're really like.
Right. Yeah, they're in a hothouse surrounded by the world's
orchids.
Yeah, exactly. And your sweat stains your. That's a great scene. In the Big Sleep.
The Big Sleep. That's the opening scene.
Bogart did a great job with that one, but. Yeah, no, and that hasn't changed. But I think what's different is that these people, there's an eccentricity. I mean, there's this quasi-religious thing that's going on that I don't fully understand. That I heard reference to a few times. There's a kind of mysticism involved. I never because it wasn't relevant necessarily to what we were working on. I didn't pay a lot of attention to, but I heard some of this shit. They're just weird, but Elon is a special kind of weird on top of that. That's all I'll say.
Please clap.